In this episode, we see if we can put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Final fitting and welding up the cab corner to repair the damage on my 78 F-150. I also weld up a custom exhaust out of mandrel bends and get the truck running and starting off of the key. Okay, we are final fitting this whole inner outer rocker floor schmozzle on this side. What hung me up forever was this patch down here, and it's because I was blowing through and there was a bunch of contaminants in the weld until I just decided to say screw it and lap weld that joint. Guess what? Super easy, went on the first try. Do need to grind that out, and there might be like a little bit of a bump there, but you know what? It's right next to where your feet go in the floorboard, so who cares? The problem was that this truck had undercoating up in here, which preserved the truck pretty well, so good job there. But what would happen is it would keep getting pulled into my weld up here when I was doing a butt weld, and contaminate it and blow out, and it was just a horrible mess. So cut a new patch from scratch and welded her in. There's the old one, which may have been removed with some, anger, but it's actually a cleaner job this way. So I will use that going forward. So now I'm final fitting everything. Had issues with weld through primer, like got 3 cans from the parts store and they were all bad. So hit it with some Rust-Oleum rust stops and then some Duplicolor primer. And then I just went and ground it off on all the places where my spot welds are going to be, which you kind of end up doing with weld through primer anyway. So let's show you how to fit this in here. First thing I do is the inner rocker. It's going to go in first, then the outer, and then I think the door little corner piece, and then inner and outer B-pillar cab corner stuff. So let's get this all on here. We will throw the fender on there one last time, throw the door on there one last time, and then we're going to burn this stuff all in there, because as of today I have a week left in this shop. So this thing has to get mobile, like right now. And it's pretty close as far as engine and drivetrain stuff. Just need to get this kind of hot glued together. Threw the fender on there for a quick test fit. It's definitely good enough for the girls we run with. So that's what your inner rocker looks like, outer rocker. I was checking this fender bolt here to make sure it looks good. And then that's what it looks like in there where the cab corner goes. That got tweaked a little bit in the midst of all this, so I'll have to clamp and bend a little bit, but that is what the rough fit up for the final time looks like. We're going to start welding the inner and outer rocker, and then we will remove our clamps that'll be in the way, and we're gonna test fit the door and the fender one final time before we burn in all the outside pieces. So here we go. I'm just trying to block the light there. Well, it's getting to be about that time. Time to snip out this door bar. See if our door still fits. This is definitely a if I can do it, you can do it moment, because I am not a body man. But this aftermarket cab corner and this original from the junkyard upper cab corner, I had to do this because you can't actually get one up this high. The reproductions I think only come up to here-ish, probably right there where I made that line. Anyway, the corner, the curve is different, and luckily, like, this is not a spot you see very much, but this is what I had to do. I got it clamped on there and trimmed how I like, and it was overlapping here, so I took a cutoff wheel. You can see this strip hanging out there that's about the width of a cutoff wheel, and zipped it all the way across, so I had a nice little 1/8 inch gap there to weld. And then I got it all lined up here how I want, clamped on there, tack welded. And then this was sticking out farther than the OE part up here, and it's just because the curve is not as crisp, which you'll have that on them aftermarket jobs. So anyway, it just takes patience. Don't go all caveman and just start wailing on this thing with a hammer. You can see here it's not lining up, so I don't know if I can really video myself doing this, but I'm just real gentle. Otherwise you're gonna put a bunch of divots and creases in it. See how that's getting tighter right there? And I had to do that all along here also. Just it's not hammer and dolly because you can't get a dolly back there, but just real easy. And if we end up with too much material, because I might have to make a slit or two to get it how I want it, and then stitch weld those up, grind them smooth. But anyway, this cab corner is a good place to start on sheet metal work because most of it is not visible. So, make your mistakes and learn from them over here, so that when you do panels where everybody can see them, like wheel well arches and stuff like that, you're a better craftsman. So anyway, I'm gonna keep plugging away on this, and we'll bring you back when it's ready to shoot some primer on it. Okay. Now, I didn't film any of this because I was pretty angry, and this is a family-friendly show. Now, that being said, I wanted to talk about this. I guess talk on this show the way that I do in the shop with my boys, that, how I grew up working with men. Well, not quite, but you'll hear some minor cusses here and there, and I'm going to leave them in because I was watching a show about this fake-ass person on YouTube, and it, I don't know, it just made me think that, like, that's not real life. Real life, Dad lets, Uncle Josh lets a little few cuss words slip in the shop, even when the kiddies are out here. But I'm not gonna be like a filthy potty mouth. Like, I'm not gonna use the kind of words that we use when you're working cows or Brandon or something like that, because those definitely no way I would get monetized with that going on. So anyway, This deal, radiator was back in, it's back out, and then it went back in and then back out. Because, you know, like a normal person, I thought, let's put the radiator in there, and then you kind of put the shroud and the fan, drop them in there at the same time, and there's enough room to hold the shroud up, get the fan all snug down, and then you put the shroud against the radiator and bolt it down. Nah. Nope, nope, nope. I tried doing that. I wore out all the old cuss words. I made up some new ones, and it still wasn't working. Cut my knuckles, dropped the fan into the radiator about 7 times, had a minor meltdown, and I decided let's do it this way. This is kind of how you do it on most new cars, and that's you have all of that stuff in there, and then you just slide the radiator down, bolt it in, and then bolt the shroud to it. That's how you do it on new cars for the most part, because there's no room. Surprisingly, there's less room with this 460 than there was with the 400. So I'm thinking this has the mounting on the radiator at the back, which pushes the radiator more towards the engine. These trucks had a bunch of different flanges and core sizes, and it's a whole thing. I'm betting the 460 trucks had that flange to the front, which would push the radiator out into the core support a little bit. But that's neither here nor there. And I actually have a big 4-core 460 radiator over there, but it's going to need rebuilt. So we're going with this for now because this is fresh. I didn't do this, but it was actually done at the old radiator shop I worked at, and it looks like it's a new core. So it might have even happened when I worked there, and I didn't realize that it was for my old truck, because those old, what is that, like a 455 or a 454 DPI number radiator? We did tons of those, because there's tons of these old Fords still on the road, you know, unlike, you know, Dodges and Chevys. Anyway, they still get used for work, you know, because there's a reason they've been the #1 selling truck since like the year before this truck was made. Anyway, so this is in here. There's my old Flexolite Flexi fan. Not thrilled about using it. I might swap to a clutch fan sometime, but I don't want to run an electric fan because I don't want to have heating problems. Here is the spacer that I ended up using. And don't worry about that little bronze bushing in there. You won't need that unless you do dumb stuff like I did. So don't worry about that guy. That little guy, don't worry about that little guy. Okay, I'm gonna drop the radiator in there. I'll bring you back when it's all together. So the 400 is not a small engine. You wouldn't think the 460 would be that much bigger, but it's definitely bigger. So I had to trim this much out of my stock 400 fan shroud. I don't remember if I videoed that or not, but it's probably a 1/2 inch at the fatter part right here, because it was almost touching the alternator. And then just the engine definitely comes farther forward. The fan spacer, the least I could get away with without hitting pulleys and stuff, is kind of too far in the shroud. We'll see how that works, but yeah, it's definitely bigger. I always used to advocate for getting full concentrate coolant and mixing it yourself because the pre-mixed stuff was a ripoff, but actually Napa, I think they had this on sale, but the pre-diluted stuff, it'll have good distilled water in it, so you don't have to worry about stuff. I can't remember if it was just on sale or what, but it was only like $9 or $10 a gallon, which by the time you figure water that you would mix with the other stuff with that's free, it's only like $1 more. The pre-diluted stuff's only like $1 more, so freaking go for it. You don't have to mess with it, you know? We got to shake that one for good measure, you know? You don't want to fill these ones all the way up to the top. There's actually a little sticker on the front of the core support that tells you how much space to leave for expansion. Because if you fill them all the way full, when they get warm and the coolant expands, it will puke antifreeze out of the overflow, because these don't have a reservoir, but I mean, and that'll take care of it. Well, this big block takes a lot of coolant. And this is my stock 3-row radiator from the 400 that's in really good shape. It had just been rebuilt not too long ago, according to the tag, at the radiator shop that I used to work at. So, should be good to go. That's 4 gallons now. Oh, but let's just pour it all on the ground. That's 4 gallons. That'll be good enough to start it and whatnot, but I think it's still gonna need some more. Of course, everything was totally empty because this is a fresh build. Let's see if we got water in the lower hose. Yeah, it feels like it. Okay, so I've bent and mangled this original dipstick tube enough times that it ain't gonna be the plan anymore. So I'm gonna show you how we're gonna make our own dipstick tube and reuse the stock dipstick. See, where I went wrong was trying to snake the dipstick tube through the headers for a clean look, because the stock ones kind of, they like curve up out of the oil pan and hang way out there, which I didn't really like. I wanted a cleaner look, but I guess that's not gonna happen. So we're gonna make one that curves out sort of like the stock one, but fits around my shorty headers. So first step, this guy is all that I'm reusing of the old dipstick, because this is like snaps in with a clip and has an O-ring, so not super easy to duplicate. So I got a stick of 3/8 brake line right here, 30 inches long. Our dipstick tube needs to be 24 11/16 or 5/8, depending on how you measure. So what we're gonna do is obviously make it the bigger size to start with, and then instead of making a new mark on the the dipstick itself, we'll get it all filled up and we'll actually trim, well, this end, we'll trim it down a little bit until the dipstick reads correctly. So this is just a stick of coated brake line, hard brake line. We're gonna make it uncoated. Maybe with all the crap out of the way, we can actually be somebody here. I have no idea if you can see, and if you can't, I apologize. Lord Almighty. Alrighty then. It ain't pretty, but I mean, neither am I. Hi guys, it's me from the future, realizing that I don't have any footage of the exhaust that I did on here and a few other things. There's gonna be some stuff that doesn't make sense right now, but we'll get to all of it in the next episode. Okay, so here is how I have this wired up. My ignition that's hot during crank and start came off of the 2-wire plug that goes right there, which I think is the original coil wiring on these trucks. But at least it is that wire. I think it's white with a blue tracer. As of now, anyway, it appears to have full battery voltage. We'll do more testing on that. Right over there by the voltage regulator, I have a relay which feeds power to my electric fuel pump. The trigger wire for that, they are powered off of the white wire over there that used to go to the ignition module. And it's not hot in crank, only in run, which you don't need the choke or the fuel pump really during crank. So anyway, let's get into the exhaust. Okay, this is what we have underneath. There's my Carter fuel pump. So this is the same no-name dual in, dual out X muffler that I put on this truck with the 400 when I built new exhaust, and it is just a 2.5 inch dual in, dual out. These are just 2.5 inch straight pipes and mandrel bends using the nice AccuSeal clamps. So you can see there, go up to my L&L shorty headers. Just got a 90 here. It does hang down a little low, but I should be able to get the oil pan out of there if I need to. Another 90 here, and that one goes straight back to the muffler. This one was a little bit of a weird bend. I think it's like a 45 and then a loose slip fit on that part, and kind of use the play in there because it's not quite an actual 45, but there's the passenger side L&L header, and that's what she looks like looking down the truck. And here is the dipstick that you saw me making. This was the part of the end I had to reuse because these trucks have this little tube that's part of the oil pan, and this snaps in there with a little O-ring, and there's a little clip on there, which you probably can't see. And this is how I had to route my new dipstick tube. Goes up there, and it has a bracket on the top that I made. Here, I'll show you that. There's my port for a wideband O2 sensor that's going to go in there because I really want to dial in the carb on this thing real nice. Here's my finished dipstick tube and the little bracket that I made that goes to the header bolt. There's where my wiring taps into the white wire that used to be for the ignition module on the DuraSpark, and I'll get into all that a little bit more in the next episode. Okay, here's first start attempt. Had a couple fuel leaks that I got nipped up, and I have a temporary ignition wire to one that I think is hot in crank and start. Got a full carburetor, full coolant, somewhat exhaust. Do we have Earl? Earl? Yes, possibly over full. That'll be fine. Okay, let's fire it up. Well, that was anticlimactic. I guess I need to tighten the battery cables. Okay, take two. Are we maybe losing spark? Or do we just need more squirt? Get out of, why are you zoomed in on there? Whoa! Not that loud. I don't think the timing's real far off. I think the pop noise is I've got an open O2 sensor bung with nothing in it, so it's probably popping out of there. Just lighting off some unburned fuel when it hits the oxygen. Wow, I really thought it was going to be louder. So let's plug that O2 sensor hole, make that ignition wire a little more permanente since it works, and I have to wire up the choke and the fuel pump relay, and I think we're in business. Well, I have to admit defeat. I did have it running long enough to know that it makes choppity noises in the truck, so that's good. You never really let them idle on the dyno, so you can't really tell. You can't really get a feel for it. Two things are hosing me here. One is I can't find my gosh damn clutch linkage Z-bar rebuild stuff. The little felts and bushings, which I had a brand new kit from, I think it was Scott Drake or whatever. As you see, we have lost the shop. Full on. There's just a little bit of junk in here in the 78. Because we're moving. So, well, we have moved. This is the last of the junk that's over here that I gotta get. So, it's just across town, so I think we're gonna hook up the toe strap of shame and just tug this thing home as long as there's room in the garage. And then we gotta load up a trailer full and take that junk over to the garage as well. But it's really close. It's the clutch linkage, and I had 2 spark plug wires swapped, 6 and 2, I think. So it was popping out the exhaust, which that's what that was. When I got them swapped, I triple checked the firing order, and it just doesn't run right. It's like it's loading up, and the timing has to be way advanced for it to idle decently. So that ain't right. We're gonna take a break. We'll get it in the new garage over there and go back over everything fundamentals. Anything that's changed since it was on the dyno, which would be restabbing the distributor and stuff. So, see you then. Well, it happened. Everybody talks about it, but we actually lost the shop. There's the last of it. Let's go load up the trailer and get the flock out of here, and we'll tell you what's going on. Adios, old shop. It's been real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun.